The night shift in the old stamping plant was a beast of monotony, especially when it was just me and the G20 hydraulic press. Its rhythm was the only clock I knew, a deep, shuddering hum as it built pressure, a deafening whoomph as it slammed down, then a long, metallic sigh as it reset. Hour after hour, it never stopped. At first, it was just the noise, the constant, mind-numbing repetition that started to play tricks on your ears. I'd swear I heard faint whispers in the rush of the hydraulics, like conversations buried deep within the machine's guts. I'd shake my head, blame fatigue. Everyone gets a little stir-crazy on the graveyard shift. But then the whispers grew clearer. Not distinct words, not yet, but a definite cadence, almost a plea, rising and falling with the press's cycle. I'd glance around the cavernous, empty factory, my heart thrumming against my ribs, convinced someone else was there, playing a sick joke. There was never anyone. Just the cold steel, the flickering light, and that relentless, rhythmic sound. One night, I was loading a sheet of raw steel, and the press paused. Not a mechanical hiccup, but a deliberate, almost expectant stillness. The hum dropped to an unnerving whisper. And then, as clear as day, I heard my name. Not shouted, but breathed, pulled from the very air that flowed through the machine's vents. My hands froze, the steel sheet clattering to the ground. The machine restarted, its whoomph now sounding less like an impact and more like a hungry gulp. I stood there, staring at the massive jaws, now closing and opening with a different rhythm, one that seemed to match the whisper in my head. I walked away, but the sound followed me, a low, guttural murmur that was no longer just the press. It was a voice, and it was calling my name, telling me to feed it. And I knew with a certainty that turned my blood to ice that it wasn't just metal anymore. It was waiting. Checking the cold storage at 3 a.m. was always the worst part of my shift. The air bit at your exposed skin, and the silence was so profound it buzzed, broken only by the distant thrum of the refrigeration units. My breath plumed out in front of me as I moved between rows of towering racks, each holding crates of frozen produce. One night, as I walked, my footsteps, usually muffled by the heavy-duty flooring, seemed to echo strangely. Not a normal echo that faded, but a second, softer set of steps, slightly out of sync with my own. I stopped. The second set of steps stopped too. I strained my ears, hearing only the hum and the drip of condensation. "Hello?" I called out, my voice swallowed by the vast, empty space. Nothing. I continued, trying to dismiss it as the cold playing tricks on my ears. But then I heard it again. A faint, almost imperceptible cough, followed by a shuffling sound from somewhere deeper in the labyrinthine aisles. My blood ran cold, literally. I knew for a fact I was the only person in this section of the warehouse. Every door was sealed, every motion sensor deactivated for my patrol. I sped up, my flashlight beam cutting through the misty air. The cold seemed to intensify around me, a sudden piercing chill that went beyond the ambient temperature. As I rounded a corner into a particularly long, narrow aisle, I saw nothing. But the distinct thud of footsteps began again, clear and deliberate, coming from the far end of the corridor, moving towards me. I stopped dead, my heart hammering against my ribs. There was no one there. But the sound wasn't an echo. It was distinct. I could feel the vibrations through the frozen floor. The footsteps grew closer, closer, until they seemed to be right in front of me, though my flashlight showed only empty, frost-covered air. Then they stopped. The cold intensified to an unbearable degree, a silent, unseen presence pressing in on me. I didn't see anything, but I knew it wasn't an echo. Something was walking these frozen corridors, and it had been following me. My job on the night shift was mind-numbingly simple. Assemble tiny circuit boards for a new line of smart sensors. Click, screw, test. Thousands of them, identical, passing under my hands for 8 hours straight. The monotony was a slow, creeping poison that blurred the edges of reality. It started subtly. I'd pick up a sensor, a small, black, circular component with a single glassy lens, and for a fleeting moment, I'd swear it was looking back at me. Not just reflecting the light, but truly observing, like a tiny, unblinking eye. I'd blink, shake my head, blame the lack of sleep and the incessant drone of the assembly line. But the feeling persisted. Each night, more of them seemed to possess that unsettling gaze. As they moved down the conveyor belt, hundreds of these little black eyes would pass, and I'd feel a prickle on the back of my neck. The sensation of being silently watched by a multitude of inert objects. The rhythm of the line, the metallic clatter, began to sound like a collective whisper. A judgment passed from every sensor that rolled past my station. One night, the feeling became unbearable. Thousands of these tiny black orbs were moving towards me, each one a silent observer. Their collective presence felt heavy, oppressive, as if they were absorbing all the warmth and light in the room. I reached out, my hand trembling, to pull one particular sensor off the line. It felt unnaturally cold, heavier than it should have been, almost as if it resisted being lifted. As I held it, its glassy lens seemed to deepen, to draw me in, and I felt a profound, chilling sense of understanding, as if it knew everything about me, everything about my life, my tedious job. I dropped it, watched it tumble off the line and disappear under the conveyor. But the feeling didn't go away. The next sensor that came past had the same gaze, and the next, and the next. They weren't just watching me anymore. They were listening. And I realized, with a horrifying clarity, that it wasn't just a handful of faulty sensors. Every single one of them was awake, connected, and they were all silently observing us, their creators, from the shadows of our own industry.